countdown. We're showing you right now the top free agents. Those highlighted some of the biggest names that still have not agreed to deals. It's been a little slower today. We saw a ton of action yesterday, but look at that, number one on the list. Trey Hendrickson, still waiting to find out where he will go. We'll talk about that more. But Adam, let's start with some of the biggest news of the day that just came down. Geno Smith returning to the Jets.
Oh, Lord, Geno Smith is in New Jersey. He is taking his physical with the team. He has agreed to a restructured contract where the Raiders will pay the bulk of the salary. The Jets will take on the rest. And the Raiders are sending Geno Smith and a 7th-round pick to the Jets in exchange for a 6th-round pick. You remember, Geno Smith started his career with the Jets, spent his first 4 years in New York. Now he's back to finish his story. As we put up in the tweet, Geno once said, "They wrote me off. I ate right back." Well, the letter got lost in the mail. Geno's back now. The mail has resurfaced, as has Geno Smith. He's ready to come back to New York in a full circle moment to finish his career. As for the New England Patriots, they get the wide receiver help that they needed. Romeo Doubs reaches agreement on a 4-year deal worth up to $80 million. Romeo Doubs had been on the market. The Patriots had been looking for wide receiver help after moving off of Stephon Diggs, and now they get their help. Braden Smith, the Colts' versatile offensive lineman, reached agreement today with the Houston Texans. Stays in the division on a 2-year deal worth up to $25 million, including $13.5 million guaranteed. The Texans have put an heavy emphasis into improving their offensive line. They've now done that. They get a deal done with Braden Smith. And the Detroit Lions, who moved on and traded David Montgomery, now are signing Isaiah Pacheco to a 1-year deal. He'll be the type of physical runner that complements Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit. He leaves Kansas City, who made the move for the Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker. The offseason is the time for player moves. Old back out in Kansas City, old back out in Detroit, new back in Kansas City, new back in Detroit. That's how it works, Laura.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the NFL looks a lot different today than it did 2 days ago. So much action yesterday. As I told you off the top, it's been a little slow today. We'll see if any more action happens in the next couple of hours. Adam's with us the whole way. We take you right till 5 p.m. right after this NFL Live. We got Jason McCourty, Louis Riddick. Lewis, you got news on your phone?
No, you know what? I'm just constantly like Adam just inundating us with all this info, man.
Jeremy Fowler as well. Again, we'll go right back to Adam as soon as anything happens, and he'll be bringing us all the latest. But let's start with Geno Smith. Lewis, when you think about the fit there for Geno personally, but also what it means for that offense and Aaron Glenn's team, what comes to mind?
I think what comes to mind first and foremost is it's about relationships with Geno, because going back there can't be easy considering how it all started and then how it ended and now how it's restarting again. Full circle moment. Look, that's putting a positive spin on it. It'd be interesting to hear what Geno's really feeling, privately and personally. But I think the most important relationship is the one he's going to have with offensive coordinator Frank Reich. That's the most important thing for me right now is what's that first conversation going to be like? How is Frank going to present this to him as far as, look, this is how I'm going to use you. This is how we can work together. We understand what's happened here in the past. We understand what we don't have. What we do have, though, is we got a hell of a running back in Breece Hall. We got a bunch of young studs on this offensive line.
Absolutely.
We still need some wide receivers to go along with, Garrett Wilson and really kind of get that part of it going. But this is how I can help you finish off your career the right way, because no veteran wants to kind of just drift off into the sunset with a bad football team. And I think Frank can help him with that.
Absolutely. And I think for Geno, the journey is so amazing to think that for Jets fans, Geno Smith coming back to town, they're probably excited to get Geno Smith.
Yeah.
You're hearing about this trade, and I think if I'm Geno Smith, I would have loved to be a free agent. Just from the standpoint of I would have gotten a chance to choose my destination and really evaluate and see. But I think coming from the Raiders, and the one thing you mentioned I think is so important, if I'm a quarterback, you talked about the young guys up front on the offensive line. What he just left with the Raiders, he was getting beat up last year. So now you get an opportunity to have 5 guys in front of you that can protect you. You have Breece Hall, like you mentioned, to be able to get the ball on the outside, and Fowler's looking like, I got stuff going on. But I hear you. So for Geno Smith, you're excited for the opportunity to go back and right or wrong almost in the sense of how you started your career.
Yeah, quick add. Minnesota Vikings were a pivot point here because a lot of these quarterbacks that were becoming available, including Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, others, looked at Minnesota as a destination. So the Jets took the guesswork out. They said, we're just going to get you off the market, even if we have to give up a late-round pick To us, that's worth it when the Raiders are already covering a lot of the contracts, so they get him for cheap still, and he doesn't get to go somewhere else because Geno was on the short list for Minnesota.
Yeah.
Well, a reminder, too, that Kyler Murray, if you're thinking about him, and we've talked a lot about him going to Minnesota, but he won't officially be released until tomorrow. That's why some of that hasn't happened, although you do wonder here, Jeremy, just a quick follow-up, could you see Kyler traded like what we saw here from Geno? We didn't really expect to see this, but is that possible?
This does open the door for that. The Arizona Cardinals are doing the same thing that the Las Vegas Raiders just did. You have to cut him by the first day of the new league year, which is tomorrow. So the Raiders said, hey, let's just hold out until we get a pick for him, and the Jets wanted to make sure this worked out for everyone, took him off the market. Certainly the Vikings could do the same thing, but if you're Kyler Murray, if he has any power in this situation, I think he would like to be released, and then he could take his time a little bit, maybe even go on an official team visit, a free agent visit, go visit Minnesota, go talk with maybe even the Colts because they need short-term help while Daniel Jones is getting back from an Achilles. So there are a lot of factors in play.
We heard Orlovsky throw that out on Free Agency Frenzy with Pat McAfee a little while ago. Adam, when you think about just this quarterback market and what we're talking about here, what's important context for?
Well, Laura, Kyler Murray has a bonus due in his contract later this week at the end of the week, and the Cardinals are not going to pay that bonus. They've already announced that they'll move on from him, but they're going to release him before that bonus is paid. Now, whether they release him tomorrow by 4 p.m. or Thursday or Friday remains up in the air. The hope around the league is that it's tomorrow, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and Kyler Murray gets released. I think once he is released, assuming there is not a trade partner that materializes the way that there was one for Geno Smith, and the feeling is that there won't be, that Arizona will wind up releasing Kyler Smith, I think everybody across the league just assumes ultimately that Minnesota is the most likely landing spot for Kyler Murray. There always could be another team that steps in. We'll see how this all plays out this week. But if we're going to lay guesses as to how it all plays out, Kyler Murray gets released this week, probably tomorrow, 4 p.m., and then shortly after, you would think Minnesota would reach out and see if the Vikings could work out a deal.
And we'll be on TV then, too. So Adam will be with us to give us all the latest as that news comes in. Geno Smith going back to the Jets. That's the news that we know right now. His last appearance for the Jets came October 23rd, 2016. Let's talk about the free agency board when it comes to the wide receiver market. We've already seen some action there a little while ago. Romeo Doubs going to the Patriots. We thought that the Patriots would try to grab somebody. You see some key names there highlighted that are still awaiting a new opportunity. But when you think about what the Pats did, we knew that they were in on some of these other names, even to J-Mac. But what does Doubs bring to their offense, specifically in Drake May?
I think what I love about him is his route running ability. For Drake May, you get a guy that you can line up on the outside and he can win. And I think that's going to be a major part. He can get down the field as well. We saw that from Kayshon Boutte. He was a guy that separated and made plays down the field all season long. So when you get a guy like Romeo Doubs that you can line up on the outside and he can get one-on-one coverage on a third down situation, you can move him on the inside, and he has the ability to separate so sudden off the line of scrimmage, which is such a difference maker when you're matched up against a cornerback who likes to be up in line of scrimmage and likes to be aggressive. That's the part that you love about Romeo Doubs, a hands catcher type of player. So I think he's a guy that you don't want to give up a ton for A.J. Brown. I think that's what it probably came down to it. The relationship with Mike Vrabel and A.J. Brown is one that you would have been excited about. But are you willing to give up a first-round draft pick when you're only in year 2 in a new regime? I think that was the reason they decided not to, and you get a guy like Romeo Doubs that can impact the outside as well.
Yeah, it's all about cost, right? I mean, I'm sure Mike would have loved to. Look, I mean, if you're picking between those two guys and you're sitting in your lineup, you're going, look, I don't want anything to do with no Philly. I think I'll take 87 from Green Bay. But you're right, Jim. Like, I mean, he's a dude. Look, Romeo Doubs is one of those dudes who's just so slick at the line of scrimmage. Very good at the top of the route. Very sudden. Very deceptive. And he can run all of the routes. He's one of those dudes who's not afraid to come across the middle. You saw him hitting those big 4 routes, those benders coming inside. He'll go up and take those. He can win on the fades. He can win on the one-on-ones and outside. So, yeah, I mean, this was obvious what they needed. It was just a matter of, what do we have to pay in order to get the kind of production, the kind of profile, the profile wide receiver that we need. They got it. They filled it.
Yeah, so where are we with the A.J. Brown situation then, though? Are they just not going to trade him, the Philadelphia Eagles, or who else could be in the market for him now, potentially?
Another pivot point there is the New England Patriots, because my sense this morning was that they had sort of cooled on A.J. Brown, or at least there wasn't any steam for a deal becoming imminent, and they were working on this Romeo Doubs situation. So Doubs was deciding between the New England Patriots and the Washington Commanders. Both teams had competitive offers out for him. When he chose New England, Now they have a lot of money committed to Romeo Doubs and some other players that they signed in free agency. I'm not so sure they're going to allocate the resources to go get A.J. Brown, and they were considered one of the top contenders for Brown if the Eagles were to do a deal. So the Eagles are in a tough spot because if they trade A.J. Brown, they have to take on a lot of dead salary cap hits. So as a result, they're asking for the moon. Nobody has matched that. So the sense right now is that there's nothing imminent. It could still, kind of recreate, but right now I don't sense it.
Yeah, Adam, is Howie Roseman and company, are they going to just kind of stay on that asking for the moon type philosophy here? Is anybody getting close to that? Or people kind of waiting out the A.J. Brown situation? What do you know?
Well, Laura, what happens here is that there are windows of time and pockets in which you can make a trade. There was a window in time, I think, last week before the Max Crosby trade got done. Now, the Eagles never made an offer on Max Crosby, but they're watching because they're trying to get a deal done with Jalen Phillips. Now, if Max Crosby still were available, would the Eagles have been backing on Max Crosby? I think they might have been. There also was a window right before the start of the negotiating period. I was going to call it the new league year that starts tomorrow. The negotiating period. Monday, 12. I confused my time. It's all a bunch of BS. Free agency starts at noon on Monday. Anyway, there's a window before there where if the Eagles are going to make a move on A.J. Brown, you would want to do it there so that you know the resources you do and don't have to go attack the heart of free agency. Well, the top players are off the board. Jalen Phillips is now in Carolina. So there really were a couple of windows last week where if a trade is going to happen, it would have happened then. Now, that doesn't mean a trade couldn't come up, but I think there's no urgency. And as Jeremy said, the steam is out right now. So could this bubble up again before or during the draft? Yes, it could. Could it bubble up again before June 1st or right after? It could. Training camp? Yes. It's gone away for right now. It doesn't mean it's gone, but there's no urgency and there's